Hi friends, let's give some more time, like 2 more minutes before we start our session. Hopefully you can hear me, just a sound check. Please let me know if you can hear me, please. It will be a great help. Cool. Thank you so much, Pradeep and Sanjay. Start in another 1 minute for people to join. This is an animated video. Why is it not happening? Huh. No. Oh yeah. All right, cool. So now it's time. Hi, friends. Welcome back again to the video of this week's poll, which was microservice testing. Hope you're all doing good and hope you're all doing safe and happy. So today's session is more towards the microservice testing. So if you remember this week's, while the week was starting, I actually posted a poll and I could probably show how the poll was looking as well. So it was the poll regarding what will be the best way of testing a microservice if the microservices are going to be relying on third-party services and systems like payment gateway or email, and how about the other systems, like how do you actually test that particular systems. So this was the polling result that I got. Surprisingly, I see a mocking got 52 percentage and contract testing got 36 percentage. Calling the real service objects got 11 percentage. Fortunately, none of the above got 0 percentage, which is good. So so the community actually thinks about this particular way of testing the microservices. Mocking is best. Contract testing seems to be 36 percentage, which is just quite less comparatively. And calling real service objects, still people think 11 percentage, which is out of 367. I think at least 40-50 people have agreed on that, which is not which is what has happened. All right, so that's about the polling result. So now let's see what is going to be the actual discussion that we are going to be doing over here. So I'm just looking at the live as well, if you can hear me. All right, cool. So let's first begin with the real objects, because that has got the low point, like 11 percentage, and let's see what is the real object thing is all about. So this gives us like 100% confidence while we use the real objects, right? Like you can actually call the real APIs, you can do the testing, and you will see that it is going to work as expected. And for making that particular real object to be working for you, you actually need to set up the real instances of your application. For example, if you're going to be working on a small company, like a startup company, you would probably be using like some of their services, like very small APIs installed in your machine, or probably on the cloud, or like AWS or Azure or something like that. You'll be using that. But the problem is, if you're going to be involved in any third-party services or APIs like payment gateway or CAPTCHA, for example, or email servers, I'm just giving some simple examples. If you're going to be relying on these kinds of setups or APIs, then it is going to be a problem. But it is not going to be a problem for small companies, but for bigger companies, it is going to involve a lot of different APIs. Then you have to have all these set up in place, right? That's how the real APIs can be tested. That's how the real objects can be tested, basically. And these services should be up and running for you to be tested. And some of the example of using the real object for testings, we have used it many times. We use testing tools like REST Sharp, REST Assured, Postman, Thunder. So you would have used many different tools for that matter. So we use these tools to make the API testing, and it works pretty fine for us with the real objects, right? But the problems we have seen, that's what 11% of the people have agreed, which is good. I'm very happy with that. The next one is the mock objects. So these are like asset names. These are not the real objects. So basically, we are going to be mocking a particular service or a particular APIs like payment, captcha, whatever that we have seen. Mostly all their dependencies, and then we are going to inject these mocked object into our actual system under test, and then we'll see how it actually works. For example, we have an API which is going to deal with the payment gateways, but it doesn't really do the payment processing itself. For that particular API to be tested, we'll be just mocking the actual payment API itself. For example, you'd have heard some of the payment gateway like Paytm, for example, in India, and similarly some other payment gateways. We'll be just using that gateway within our APIs, and then we'll be just testing that whether it is working fine or not, for that matter. But that's not going to be a real API, but we just mock that particular Paytm gateway and we'll be using within our application. Then the next natural question comes is, why are we really mocking that particular APIs? Why can't we just use the real one? Because it's not a real testing, right? So just think about this situation where you are just going to be doing a development and you are not going to be involved in the payment gateway at all. I mean, you're not even going to make a real payment transactions. Why do you even require the payment gateway for that matter? So you can just do a mock object for that. And that's even more cheaper. For example, some of the APIs like address finder or some other APIs will actually require you to make a payment if you do a single search. For example, if you're going to be doing a search for an address, every single click or every single search of an address will be actually paid or maybe billable for the actual company who is going to be consuming that particular API. If you just do the mocking for that, you don't even incur any payment for that API. So that's how things are going to be. So that's about one of the examples that I'm giving, which we are probably using it in our companies at the moment. So there are so many different APIs like that. And if you're going to be involved in multiple different APIs, like third-party APIs, then you can just focus on a specific API that you are testing instead of involving all these API that you have got. That's the power of the mocking objects. So what is the problem with this mocking object part now? So they don't really test the system under test with the real dependencies, right? That's our major problem. And they are better to test certain components, but not the whole system. If you're going to test the whole system, then mocking is really a problem. And some of the examples of using mocking for testings is like, we'll be using some tools like Mock, you would have heard about it, Fake It Easy, Auto Fake It, or Mockito. So all these are like the mocking tools that we can use to do the mock testing. And that was 36% we saw in the community, right? The next one is the contract testing. This is interesting because contract testings are basically like two folds. They are first set up like a mock test with the accepted system behavior. For example, if you're going to be doing a transaction with one of the API or a microservice, which is going to involve certain behavior or certain actions for that, then we just write down all the behaviors or the actions. So here the behaviors or the action for an API is basically, if I do call an API with a GET request slash, for example, product, then it should give me a response of whatever product that I'm looking for. For example, if I'm looking for a slash product slash one, then that particular product should give me a response type as JSON, and it should give me a header, and it should give me a response with a response status as 200, and it should give me a response body with this type. And similarly for the post operation, if I post with certain JSON body, it should give me certain value out from it. So that's what is my accepted system behavior. I can set that accepted system behavior using this particular contract that you are seeing over here. Why is it not playing actually? I thought it's going to play. Anyways, that's not playing. That's about the first setup of it. So this accepted system behavior is what is called as the contract, or many different tools have got their own naming. the tool which we are going to be seeing in this particular video is going to be packed basically. So it's called as packed. Basically the contract that you're seeing over there, it's the contract that you write based upon whatever request that you're passing in, what is the response that you really wanted from the system, right? And once you have this contract, you will then pass this contract to the actual system. That's why I'm talking about the two-fold systems there. The first fold is this one. The second fold is going to be the provider test. Basically, you're going to run this particular contract against the actual system. So here, you are not just doing a mocking like what you did over here, but also you're going to be executing this particular execution of this pact or the contract against the actual system to test how the system is actually going to behave. So this is what we actually need to see how our system behaves. And that's the power of the contract testing itself. So this is what people have chosen around. Oh, this is what 36% is, right? The mocking was 50%. But yeah, so the contract testing has got a bit of less traction because not a lot of people are really using it, but it is actually going to prove you how you could do the actual testing itself. And I'm going to show you all these theoretical aspect of it in this particular video as an actual workflow code. Rather, you just see me talking these things in the PowerPoint slide. So let's see how it actually can be visualized in a code. So this is one of the project which I have been talking in most of my courses, and this is one of the source code of my course, Advanced Automation Testing of Modern Application with C#.NET. And I have just extended this particular code. This code, some of the piece of this code is not even there in the course because this code I have just developed for this session. So I will just go with the first set of testing, which is going to be the actual object testing. So if you see the actual objects, so first of all, let's understand the application under test that we are going to be testing this time. So as you can see over here, this particular application is like a product API. And if I try running this particular application, it is going to be basically what I will do is, so this application is fully running on a Docker containers and stuff. And because it is going to be fully running on Docker container, I need to do the Docker compose up so that it just starts the whole application for you. So it runs a SQL server. It also runs a run an application like APIs and UIs and stuff. And also it runs a integration test as well as the Selenium UI test. So it does all those things for us. So once this test execution is happening at the moment, you will see on my Docker desktop, it is going to show the whole application execution is happening. And I can just consume this application from here. I'll just show you how it looks like. So if I go to the localhost 5001, you will see that the application is up and running, and it's going to show you some of the products like keyboard, mouse, cabinet, and monitor. So basically all these things are coming from one of my microservice, which is running on the port number 5000 /swagger. So this is the API. And if I try calling this particular API over here, you can see that it is going to show me the responses as well. So this is the exact response which is coming up on the UI for you over here. That's it. That's this super simple application that we have got. And because it has an API involved, because it's like a microservice and it's all running inside a Docker container for us, now we need to test this particular microservice. At this point of time, I only have one microservice, but considered in a real-time example or real-world example or real-world scenarios, like Netflix, for example, or Google, for example, they have like millions, maybe millions is true, millions of services up and running. And every time these services will not be just keep running, they will be like spawned for a specific operation. And once the operation is done, they'll be just destroyed. That's why they developed this Kubernetes and stuff. And that's exactly what we are going to be doing the testing over here. But just that I can't show you with multiple different services. I'm just going to assume that this is the one of the microservices that I have got. And we are going to be testing this particular microservice. So let's see how we can test this particular microservice over here. So in order to test this microservice with the real API, you already know that pretty well, like real object. We can use Postman or we can even use the Swagger. I just showed you an example here. So while I executed this like one, and if I execute this, it's going to show me what is this particular keyboard. And if I go to the UI, you will see that the one was keyboard, which is great. And if I put 2 there, it should give me what is that, mouse? Yeah, so it's giving me mouse over here, and details are coming up, and that's what is being displayed on this particular UI. So which means the UI is actually accepting what the response is coming from the API, which is good. But now that's not the real object thing which I'm going to show you, because you are pretty familiar with that. You know how to work with Postmans and stuff. So let's not worry about the real objects. Let's talk about the mock objects or the mock automation that we can do. So if you go to this particular project over here, I have written this unit testing. So basically, most of the time, the mockings are done by unit testing. It's done by the developers, not testers who do the mocking testing. I mean, if your tester is going to do a mock testing, that's completely wrong if you are going to be using that. And I have seen people are really confusing between the mock object versus the real object while they try doing the testing. And I will tell you why the mock object is going to be dangerous and why you could do in a different way to make this really happen. So for the unit testing over here, as you can see, this is the application that I have got, like the same application. This is the test I have got. So it has got the setup, which is the arrange, and then there is an act and an assert operation. So the setup or the arrange operation, that what I have did is I'm using what is called as a library called as fake it easy. And this library, what it does is it just fakes whatever object that you give. For example, in here, it's an iProduct repository. So this iProduct repository is one of the interface from my API's repository pattern, which actually performs the operation that you're really looking for, like add the product, delete the product, and delete the product by name, and get all the product by ID and name, update the products and stuff. It does the whole operation on the database for you, right? And that's what I'm trying to fake in here. And what I'm also doing is, as a part of the faking, I'm telling that if somebody calls a method called as get product by ID with 1 as a parameter there, you return this particular product for me, which is nothing but the keyboard 1 description as whatever, and the product price 150, and the product type is peripheral, something like that. So this is what is the setup operation that I'm trying to do here. So this is fake, right? This is not real. And the system under test over here is going to be the controller. So what is this controller basically on the API world? These are the controllers that you are seeing here, the /product/get product by ID, and /product/get products /product/create, update, delete. These are controllers. So if you don't believe me, if you go to the product API and if you go to the controllers in the code over here, you'll see there is something called as product controllers. And these product controllers really talks about these controllers that you are looking over here, right? These are the controllers that we are trying to test. So basically we are testing whether my API is working fine or not. If I call this request, then it should give me this response. That's my testing here. There may be some business logic. I have not included any of the business logics in this demo, but I'm going to show you the very, very super simple, straightforward way of testing the controllers. So I'm calling the real product controller. So you see that this is the real object, like product controller, like new of product controller, but I'm passing the fake product repository here. And this is the one which I actually set up on the code before. So that's exactly what I'm trying to pass in. And then I'm verifying, I'm just calling, so you see that from the system under test, I'm calling the get product by ID. And this method is actually coming all the way from the controller. See this one. And this exactly what it does is, it is going to be calling that particular, like the product, and then it should verify whether it is a keyboard for you. So that's quite straightforward, right? Just give me 1 second. Excuse me. And then what you can see over here is like, it is actually doing the system under test, and then it is doing a testing for you for the keyboard. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing for the the other control, like other operation as well, like get all the products. So that's what it is doing over here as well. So let's see how this actually works. So if I try running both the tests, done, 84 milliseconds. So it just took 84 milliseconds to execute both the tests for us. but this is not real test. Like this is the mock test that we are doing. And who will really get benefited out of this particular test is basically developers, because these are the tests which are going to run on the pipeline for us. And once they run in the pipeline, excuse me, they actually are going to be faster, and they proves that the controller works, the logic works, and the data setup, whatever that I give, it gives me the response back. And I have not added any business logic here, and that's why it's working fine, which is good. That's about the uh, mock testing that we have. And the next big thing about is the contract testing. And actually I saw like 53% of people agreed with the mock testing. Now you tell me, I mean, after this session, is this a better way of doing the testing? Do you really think that this actually proves you that you have really tested something? All right. Anyways, just give me 1 second. Again, I'm getting the cough. All right, I think I'm better. The next one is the contract testing. So let's get into the contract testing here. Hopefully you hear me. For the contract testing, what I'm going to do is I have written the code already so that we don't write that. Let's close all the tabs. So let's not jump into the provider. So I have already written the two projects here. One is the contract test for the provider. Another one is for the consumer. And this is the test. Okay, what is the tool that I'm using? I actually forgot to mention. I think I mentioned the pact. So pact.net. This is the tool which I'm actually using at the moment, which is this one. Let me make this bright. Anyways, I think that's the page. So you can see that it says that pact is the de facto of the contract testing tool. It replaces the expensive and brittle end-to-end integration test with a faster, reliable, and easy to debug unit testing. And it's lightning fast. It's effortless, full stack integration test. It supports all these things, and it has a configurable mock server, and it powerful matching rules to perform the test, and it does a lot of things for us, which is good. And the next one is it also tests locally. It deploys faster, and it reduces the lead time for changes, reduces the cost of API integration, prevent breaking changes, understand your system usage, blah blah blah. Cool. So I mean, there are so many things which is given over here, and they have a lot of details available, like how they write the codes and stuff. So this is the one that we are actually going to be using this time, the pact, which is going to do the contract testing for us. So what I have installed is just the pact API, the pact.net library over here within my code. And you will see that what I'm doing at the moment, if you just give a bit of attention here on the code, you will actually see that what I'm doing is I'm actually calling one of the product API. I mean, this product API is once again sitting over here. So this is an auto-generated code for me on the product API. So this is basically like a representation of the actual Swagger documentation that you have got. So this is the Swagger JSON file that we have got, like the controllers, like the product by ID, the product by name, and get products that you saw on the Swagger documentation, which is this one. This is exactly what I have actually downloaded from the JSON file over here. You see that this JSON file? I have downloaded this JSON file, and I have also created a C# representation of this JSON file. And I think I have covered all these things in my course much better, but I'm just telling you in a very, very high level, like how it's been done. And once you see all these JSON representation in a C# class file, you can then start using that as a code, basically. So how you can use is you can just call the methods something like this, and I will show you how it actually does. So over here, you can see that for the product API, I'm passing a port number, and then I'm creating an instance of an HTTP client, and I'm giving a pact configuration. So this is the configuration for the pact itself, like how you does that. And once the configuration is done, you are then going to be calling or writing the actual test over here. Okay, so what is this actual test? This is what I was talking about. This is where you are actually setting the actual system's representation or the system under tests expectation, like how your system should behave. So if you see on this particular Swagger documentation for the get product by ID, if I pass /product /get product by ID /1, and you can see here with the accept as test plain, if I pass it something like this, so that's the header for me, then it should give me a response body something like this. And yeah, I think it's just like a text plain. We can actually get the text, the JSON as well. So you can see if the same thing happens for the post. If I'm not wrong, where is the post operation? Try out. Oh yeah, there you go. So you can see that we can pass like whatever type that we are looking for. So if we pass that based on that particular request body, it is going to give me the responses. So I'm going to actually see that this is my actual expectation. So if I pass the get product by ID with the text or /plain, then it should give me just the plain text. Similarly, if I pass it like text /JSON, then it should give me like a JSON representation of the response itself. Just cool. So now what I'm going to do is this exactly what I will be setting on my contract test as well. So this is what I'm setting the actual system. So what I'm saying is, upon receiving a valid request for one product, like product exist, then with the request of get /product /get product by ID /1 with the header of accept text /plain, and do you see that's exactly what I tried giving from the JSON, like from the Swagger documentation. And then the system should respond me with a status code of 200. We know that it is a status code of 200, which is this one. And then its content type is going to be application JSON, which is this one. And then it should have a body for me, which is going to be basically a seed data. So basically I return a simple method like this, like a seed data. So if you're going to pass like 1, then it is going to get this particular value. And then if it is 2, then it's going to get, I mean, I have not written all those things for me. Like this is like just like that, like a link I just used like first, which means the first value out from that particular enumerable values that I'm getting. So that's what is my body is going to be. And once I have all this setup of the pact, then what I'm doing is I'm going to be verifying if the pact value is correct or not, which means I'm verifying if my actual product ID, if I try calling the API. So you see that now if I call the product API, which is going to be this particular client, and as I told you, this is the representation of the JSON, the Swagger JSON that you just saw, like it just creates everything for you. And you can just call the get product by ID. You can also do the same thing for like get product async, and similarly delete async, create async, like everything comes in, whatever that you see in the Swagger documentation, it all just comes in as a C# code for you. And then you can assert if they are correct or not. So let's see if I execute this, what is going to basically happen. So if I go to the consumer test over here, and then if I try running this test, it executed in 2.2 seconds. It didn't even give me some chance to drink the water basically. And that's it, the test got passed. And now you may be wondering, what is different, Karthik? Like this is exactly the same same test that we saw on the mock, right? It's you are saying something, you're just setting some values there, and then you're executing it, and then they just got passed in 2.2 seconds. What is the big deal on that? So what it has done right now? Where is the contract that we're talking about? So now let's see where is the contract basically. So if I just go open the folder over here, where is the folder? Yep, over here. You see there is a folder called as pacts for me. And this pacts actually is going to be a JSON file. And if I open this with my VS Code, it's in dark. Can you see that really? Color theme, just give GitHub light default or Visual Studio. Yeah, light. Yeah. So you can see that it says that the consumer name is going to be API client, and there is an interaction that I'm trying to do, like a valid request for one product, and there is a provider state like product exist, and then I'm sending a request, and there is a method, and there is a response which I'm looking for, and that's going to be my response. Cool. So see that this is the contract that I have got. So if I pass an API with /1 as the get product by ID, then I get this is the response. So now I have a contract. Okay, well, good. I have a contract. Now what I'm going to do next? I'm going to take this contract and I'm going to execute this against the actual system, like the real system, right? So the real system at the moment is, for me, it's running in a Docker container, as you see here. And we are going to run this test against that particular system, and we'll see if that really works for us or not. So let's see how we can actually do that. So what I'm going to do, I have written one more test, one more project over here, and that's what is called as a provider test. So what this test does is basically, I'm going to close all other tabs, closed everything. So what this guy does is, it is going to do a packed verification for us. Basically what it does is, this test, it is going to just call the packed file that I have generated, like this file, on this particular location that you just saw there, and then it is going to do a verification based on the configuration that I'm passing in. And then I'm also setting a provider here as the product API, and then I'm going to set an URL as localhost 5000, and then I'm doing with file source as the packed file. So basically I'm saying that, okay, now you provider, you run one more service like an proxy service, which is the localhost 5000. You run a service for me, and also you do this whole packed interaction against the actual service for me, pretty much like how you do with the normal Postman or something like that. And then you verify whether the response which is coming up from the actual system is matching with my contract. That's cool, right? So you are testing the actual system with the contract that you have got. So that's how you could do the test against the actual service. So let's see how it actually works. I mean, this is all whole theory. You already would have understand that. Well, I told first time. So now I'm going to execute this test, and it's going to fail basically, but I'll just show you what is going to basically happen behind the scene. So while I execute, is it executed? Oh yeah, there we go. Oh wait, so it executed for us over here, and the test has got actually failed, and it says that the verifier output, let me just show you this open test log over here, a bit bigger. So you see here that this test, it says that, and you can also notice that it actually does exactly the same text that we saw on the JSON file as was in our consumer test. So a valid request for one product returns a response which has a status code of 200. It is looking like it is there. So for that request it has made the actual service, the request was 200, which is great. And it includes the header as content type with application JSON. It is also matching, that's why it is okay. But the body matching got failed. And what has gone wrong? You will see that the product type, it is expected to have a peripherals in there, but it is actually of type 2 there. So that's the reason while it does this product running execution against the actual service, there is a difference in the behavior. So you will actually notice that what has gone wrong with our consumer test. Once again, if you go all the way to the consumer test, and if you go to the test that I have got, do you notice that while we try doing the first operation, which is going to be the first value which is going to get from the link basically, which is this value, you will see that the product type basically is going to be like product type dot peripherals for us. But what is returned from the actual system was 2. So let's see what is the actual system's behavior right now. So, oh, there we go. You see that? If I try running the one in my API, you also notice that the product type, it returns 2, which is wrong, because our UI in the UI, it is actually getting the peripherals as 2, and I mean the 2 is automatically converted to peripherals, whereas in the API it returns 2, but me in my test I'm looking for peripherals because I don't want the product type as 2 there. So all these problems that you can see, that's what is the problem with the microservice testing. So in microservice, we assume that this is going to work if we do a mock, and our assumption goes wrong if we think that that's what is going to be the system behavior. So if you mock the same code that you have seen over here, our test actually got passed, and there was a wrong result that we have got, right? So we did the exact same thing for the same behavior that we did for our mocking as well. We did the product type as peripherals, mocking got passed. Whereas contract testing, it got failed. Why? Because it is actually executing against the actual system, but not the mock system. So that's the reason the test has got failed for us on the contract testing. And now this is the actual bottleneck, right? Now the developer has to fix this particular problem. And now you're raising a Jira ticket. You're going to tell the developer that, hey, you know what, Andrew or whoever, the test has got failed because I'm looking for the product type as peripherals, but it's giving me 2, which is not the actual intended system behavior or intended microservice behavior. And now once you tell that, or once you raise an issue, you are actually going in a correct path of the microservice testing. You're really doing the testing against the actual service using that particular contract file, and you can raise an issue saying that it is not matching my actual QA documentation, or what is that you say, test documentation or requirement documentation, or your API is returning me something else, and that's not what I'm looking for. And this is in a small company or in a team like who is sitting in front of you or in a remote desktop. Nobody's sitting near you, by the way, due to pandemic. If somebody is within your team who is working, you can actually call him via Teams and you can get it fixed. For example, if you're working with some service providers, for example, TCS, right? Like they are working with some companies in US probably, or within TCS, they will also have to work with some people from Infosys or maybe Tech Mahindra or whatever companies, and then they have to get to a resolution that this is what the system behavior is. So if you want to pass along this information with different companies and different team members, you need to have a concrete way to tell about this explanation, not with the documentation. Pact will really help for you. That's why contract testing is a much sophisticated, better fashion to do in microservice testing. And let's see how we fix this particular problem, and then we'll see how microservices testing can be much better with the contract testing. I've already written the code, so I'm just going to mimic as if I'm a developer who is going to fix this particular problem. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Solution Explorer here, and I'm going to go to the product API, and I'm looking for, okay, so this guy is returning me 2, which is not quite ideal. So I'm going to go to the products over here, and I'm just going to change the product type by using the JSON converter, and that's it. And once this is going to be converting to this value, and also I'm going to do a change, I guess, on the product DB context, which is going to be, yeah, I think this is quite right, I guess so. Let's see. So I'm just copy pasting the code basically, not really writing anything. Yeah, that's correct. And I also need to do one more change because this is going to be running a migrations for me. You will notice that the code actually returns the product type as integer. It should be string, and the type shouldn't be integer as well. It should be n_var_char max. And similarly, on this migration, this should be string for the product type, and this guy should be n_var_char as well. Cool. So code is developed, and the developer is going to deploy this code right now. And this is because it's all running in the microservice. We can't just deploy the code. You can't just run from the Visual Studio IDE. We need to probably do a build in the microservices. And once that's building, actually, I'm just running it a bit faster. Let's see how it goes. So once it is built and once it is deployed, you'll actually see that the code change will be there, and we can actually test that from the UI as well, from the Swagger documentation. I guess that's the only code change. Yeah, still building. Just give it some time. And while this is happening, you can also post your questions on the chat, because it's just like an ideal time. We can use it with your questions so that we can talk about it. I probably will complete in less than 10 minutes from now, and then we'll just talk more about the questions. But give it some time, because it has to process so many containers and build the images for us. And also I'm streaming the video at the moment. It's consuming a bit of memory for me right now. That's taking a bit of time more. Okay, so it's building the product API, the code that we have modified just now. Cool, it's all built. And now I'm gonna do an up again. So hopefully all the containers are up and running. And yeah, I guess they're up and running. And you can see that the integration testing is passing so quickly for us, which is great. All right, now I can ensure that my integration tests are passing, which means I am 100% sure that my tests are passing, which means my changes are already there. Let's try it out, and I'm going to say 1, and if I do execute, oh, it's not changed. See, what is the change? Oh, there we go. Is it not? No, it's not. Just give me 1 second, one more second. Maybe my copy pasting has gone somewhere wrong. It all looks pretty well to me. And what is the other change? Oh, do you see that I have really not saved this particular file? Crazy. Let me save all these files. It is in the asterisk because I forgot. Maybe I didn't save it. Because I didn't save this, it is not going to compile. Sorry about that. Yeah. Hopefully this time the build will be a bit faster. Yeah, there we go. It is not a lot of waiting time. Is it up? Yeah. There we go. So now this time it's peripherals, right? So the product type has been changed. Instead of returning 2, now it's returning me like peripherals. And if I return maybe 2, if I do execute, it is peripherals again. What else is different? If I do 3, you can see that it is returning me like CPU. Yeah, is it right? Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, so it is returning for me this time with the peripherals. So whatever, if I just give it, so it's giving me the type here, like product type, instead of the enum value there. So let's see if I run the product, the provider test, the test should pass for me, right? It shouldn't be failing, saying the the mismatch is happening. So if I run the test this time, it's passed. So 23 millisecond, and we have actually tested the test against the real system. So this is the power of the provider test. So while we execute this test right now, I change the system under test with a bit of code change, and then I ensure that the tester with the documentation they're looking for, this is what it should be, the accepted value, accepted way of testing it. And then I raised an issue, and the developer fixed that issue, and then he checked in the code, he deployed the application pretty much like the test environment or something like that. And then we executed the test this time, and it worked. So our pact or our contract test actually ensured that we actually can test the actual system without any problem or without any glitches by having just that particular contract with us, so that even the teams are segregated across the globe, you can just pass along this contract from one place to another, and you can ensure that this is what is the agreed system behavior. So this is exactly what is going to happen even for the integration with, for example, if you are using a payment system like Paytm, which I was talking about, or Stripe, for example, or something like an SMS provider or email provider. So if you think that this providers or system should behave in this fashion, then you should probably create a contract, and then you should run these tests against the actual service with the contract instead of just doing the actual system with the real system object or the mock, because mock is completely fakey, and it is created for a different reason. If you think that mock is what is going to be your solution for the problem that you're looking for, the testers, I'm definitely sure that's not going to work. But if you think that contract testing can help, I guess it will help. But real object is a real thing, but the problem is the real object setup is quite harder, and it is very, very harder while you try executing it in every day with the pipelines and stuff. So this is the solution for you. And hopefully you have understood this time with the 36% on that particular voting. I think now it's more clear or evident that the contract testing is going to be helpful for you to do an actual testing in the microservices world. That's it from my side. We got 15 more minutes to talk about the questions you have got. Let me know if you have anything in the chat. It'll be great. We can discuss about it. And I'm done with my session so far today. So let's go to the questions, and we'll see if there is any questions now. Don't really have any questions so far. I guess we had a very clear explanation probably, or maybe very confusing. You can just see whatever that you think that has to be answered, or if you think there is some better way of doing the better way of testing the microservices, you could let me know as well. But this is one of the way. And there is another way which we do microservice testings, or its observability of the microservices, because that's very important as well. So if, for example, in a company like Spotify or Netflix, they used to run like multiple different microservices in different environment, and the systems should behave and work as properly as it should be, as designated, and you should have a clear observability of how these services are up and running. And if that system has gone down, even though you run like Kubernetes and resurrection pods and stuff, still there are cases where the systems can go down because of maybe power down, for example. So the observability is super important, and that's another way of doing the testing of microservices, to ensure that the services are up and running, and we could able to test them properly. So that's another way of doing it as well. There's a question from Pradeep saying the JSON file that we use as a contract is defined by whom? Is that by client or is it still by? No. So it is actually not by the client. It is by the requirement. Like for example, we testers, right? We do that testing. Who agrees that this is what is the actual functionality? It can be your client who is asking you to develop a software. So your client may be telling you that this is what is my, maybe your client is super technical. He is involved until the nitty-gritty details of the applications, the functionality, like technical functionalities. Then he would have told you this is how the API should behave. Or in a high level, if it is just like they want this functionality and your team is developing the functionality, like the APIs and the UIs and stuff, then that is something defined by you. You means your company, and your BA, your technical architect, and your product manager, and your developers, and you as a tester have defined this is what is the behavior of an API. Then we create this contract file as we saw on that consumer test, and that's what is going to create you this JSON file. So it is going to be anybody who defines how the system should behave. So hope that answers, Pradeep. Thank you, Narendra and Ashutosh. Yeah, I was talking about the observability. That's another way of doing the testing, and there are many different ways you can do the observability testing, not only just by the availability, but also if you want to verify the logs. So there are many different ways that you can ensure that you can get the logs out from a microservice to see if there is any failure of the service and what is the state of the particular microservice. For example, if you see at the moment, like these services are running at the moment for me, I can get the logs from here, from the Docker desktop. And if I want to see what is happening with my API, then I can go over here and see what's happening with these logs. And I can inspect what is the behavior of the system. Is it healthy? What is the stat? How much memory is being used and stuff. So I could do everything from this machine because it's all sitting in my machine over here. But that's not going to be the real case. But that's going to be a different case altogether while we go with the production machines, because where there we will have like a complete different set of ecosystem, and monitoring their performances will be super important, because sometimes their memories will be overwhelmed and they might go down. You can predict that the system will go down, so you need to have that particular availability as well. So you could verify everything. That's something you can do from the observability tools as well, and you can get the logs and verify if there is any errors on the logs, and you can alert if there is any logs, if there is any errors or exceptions on the log. So you can do all these kind of observability as well as a part of the microservice testing. So there is an Amir who says, so I joined late. How can we perform contract testing on APIs? Probably you should watch the recording, my friend. It's what we have discussed in this session. Still people are sending me from my the monster info, not even in India. And what else is that? It is, so Viresh, this video is YouTube live, and it is going to be part of the YouTube. So once the session is over, you will be able to see this video as a part of the YouTube live. So it is there. You can use the same link that you used to join. So that video is going to be recorded and saved over here. Hopefully there is not much questions. I don't want to really bore you on some of the topics that we have already agreed and talked about. So I think that's clear this time. Probably next week we'll do one more polling with a different set of questions, different set of understanding with people and community, like how they do the testings and how they think that's the right way of doing testing. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm correct, maybe that's what the industry is doing, maybe the industry is doing it in a different fashion. Let me know. We'll start one more polling starting Sunday, and we'll talk about the same on Friday next week. So once again, thank you so much for joining, and thanks for your time. It was a great session and meeting you all. And thanks so much for answering that polls. That's why it triggered me to create a video this time. But yeah, it was really great talking to you all. Take care, be safe, and be kind. Talk to you all again in our next session. Talk to you all soon. Bye bye.